Okay. In 1996 through 1999 to early 2000, I was working and corresponding and calling the Navy JAG office, dealing with the shipping lanes because I was studying the shipping on planet Earth and the movement of Navy vessels and the mechanics behind that. And the Navy wanted to was asking me grammar questions simultaneously. So for every question that I would ask, they would ask a question about grammar. So it was very, very interesting. And later on down in my life in 2003, I saw the fruits of my education when I was educated in the Navy. So we'll get into that along to the short. But in the short run, they were asking me about what it took to make a prepositional phrase, what the verb of thinking was, what was the syntax of the first two prepositions, what location were they? They were a cause and a consequence, then the verb of thinking and a possession authority after the verb. So they had questions about styles of syntax and now time scenarios in grammar. They had questions about flag etiquette, what I had done with the flag, me, David, and myself. So we were on the phone, or I was on the phone probably twice a week for about 2.5 years real steady, just asking them questions because I had the right to ask because they were public servants. As public servants under a private corporation with the post office, I had the position and the function to ask the right questions, to learn about navigating foreign vessels in foreign waters, flag etiquette, how to check into with port authorities, how to put ships under commission, those sort of mechanics. I learned a lot, tremendous amount, but I also got to teach a tremendous amount about grammar and syntax. During that time frame, when it was all said and done, when I had mailed myself around the world to the Vatican and to the Universal Postal Union, they actually had a Navy computer programmer meet me in Charles de Gaulle Airport when I cleared through customs because I didn't have a passport, and he approached me with the phraseologies that I had taught in the Navy JAG 5 years before. And the phraseologies that he used was they have a vessel in the foreign seas, and he's got a possession, or he's got a cause and effect, and a possession and assignment in his prepositional phrases in a sentence structure. And they asked me, what is he missing? I says, well, he's missing the verb of thinking, but the thinking will never change the condition of the act, for it is in fact a fact. And he says, very good, say you're him. And then we went off and had a conversation over a couple drinks for a couple hours about some classified stuff. So I saw that the more I taught, point being, the more I taught about grammar, the more I could see it mirror towards me under the attraction, because what you put out there reciprocates back in this world under manifestation. So I saw the hard work and the diligence with Commander Kaufman, and I seen it used in my benefit when I was in France. So, it was an education. I learned about salvage and towing and service fees and docking fees and wharf fingers and all kinds of different maritime lingo, which made me a really fine judge. Oh yes, and when I saw the end of the third and final bankruptcy coming, and we got the flag registered in at the United Nations, and then we turned around and I filed for a position as Postmaster General and Postal-in-Inspector for the U.S. Postal Service in Washington, D.C. And I filed in solo by myself on those contracts with my number. And when they vacated the District of Columbia on the Florida Chads, the night of the Florida Chads, my contract was the only one because I had autographed the stamp and they vacated their time and space. I was the only authorized federal sovereign in the District of Columbia. I was actually a national, global sovereign at that point because of the shipping lanes and tentacles that come out of Washington, D.C. under the shipping ley lines through London and through the Vatican. But that did give me the tactical command control of the District of the Columbia. And with that, everything else, all the vessels there and all the corporations there simultaneously must come into correct communication, parsing, syntax, grammar. What I saw coming was under international bankruptcy laws, the United States had filed a international bankruptcy in October or on November 2nd, 1929. They gave 3-day notice before that, on October 29th, 1929, 3-day notice that they were going to shut down the banks, and that's when they were forced into filing another international bankruptcy on November 2nd, 1999, or 29, sorry, which was the stock market crash, just a ruse. The benefactors of the stock market crash were the banking families around the globe. Yeah, and so that kicked off the third and final international bankruptcy, and they tried to switch it, and I'm sure they're going to try to put themselves back into bankruptcy, but it doesn't change the conditions of the fact and the performance of myself maintaining the continuance of the evidence on my number and my slip for Postmaster General. And the third and final international bankruptcy come to an end on September 17th, 1999. Okay. So the United States government was filed an international bankruptcy on November 2nd, 1929. Under the 70-year moratorium for international bankruptcy, it was coming to an end. But the rules and the regulations for the bankruptcy were the Constitution of the United States, and the trustee of that was the president. So I knew the federal government somehow was going to have to vacate the presidency of the United States and create some kind of scenario to fool the citizens of this country into believing something that is and was not. And that was the Florida Chads.
Stand by. CNN right now is moving our earlier declaration of Florida back to the too close to call column. 25 very big electoral votes in the home state of the governor's brother, Jeb Bush, are hanging in the balance.
They had everybody out there looking at the computer, looking on your television, sideshowing it, punching these and counting these little notches in these voting slips. And that's because the post office was shut down. They had no flag, they had no constitution, they just had a bunch of people sideshowing it with their television. They were closed. It's over. And I am the sovereign, I'm the Postmaster General, and I'm the one in charge of the District of Columbia, for the movement of mails, cargoes, vessels, monies, values, persons. In November and October of 2012, I was ordering the courts open in Washington, D.C. at the United States Court of Claims. The United States Court of Claims sent me an engraving embossment of a all-seeing eye in a pyramid. When we did the research, David Winkle and Miller and myself, on what that hieroglyphic meant, there was no value to it. What that means is we went down to the U.S. Post Office, we went to the United States Department of Engraving, and there was no cognition of the certified seal with an all-seeing eye into a pyramid for the United States government. They sent us to the Philadelphia U.S. Mint at the U.S. Mint and Treasury for the Department for the U.S. government, for the United States Treasury. We went there and spent 3 hours with the Department of Engraving. At the Department of Engraving, they said, this symbolism is for an inside Illuminati cult. We have no jurisdiction in its function, and even why it's on a contract for the United States judicial system. It's a code. So we took a mirror and looked at it backwards, and it told us to go to the Philadelphia Benjamin Franklin Post Office.